Hey guys, so we're going to go ahead and break down the greatest moment of Phase 2 playoffs, the numbers behind some of what happened, and some of the decision making that was made. But before we jump into that, I'm going to go ahead and say spoiler warning for this Sanguine versus Renegade set. I have the VOD linked in the description below. Highly recommend you guys go watch that if you haven't yet. But that being said, let's go ahead and throw this over to the casters.
Now it is Phoenix defense time for Sanguine. Yes, you've heard me correctly. It's Sanguine on the Phoenix defense after it looked like this game was all but over. And now you have to look at their team and how well you think they defend.
Yeah, they have potential. They really do. It's all going to come down to how well is Yarkor playing around his ultimate and whether or not Shinto can pick up a kill with his.
Whoa, Barracuda eats half of his HP in damage. The shell from Jake around the end protects just a little bit more. Panatom's ult coming back up quickly. You just need a little bit more damage on this left side Phoenix. You know the Renegades are going to be fishing for it, but Sanguine are not going to give him the chance. It's the two-man dive into the backline. Yarkor leading the charge. Kraken there to divide. Panatom, he's right back in. He's used his ult. Shinto's connected. Venenu down. Will not participate any further in this fight, but you can say the same for Yarkor as Lasbra has closed the gap on the Renegades frontliner. Still more fighting maybe to be had here. Wrong-U jumping away. Jake, he does it again. Walls back. Wrong-U freezes him there, but there's not enough damage to get the kill on the Horus for the time being. Some sustain from Shinto. Maybe keeps Sanguine right where they're at in this fight. Just need a little bit more damage now if you're the Renegades. Wrong-U dashes in. Knocks up Jake. Taunt back in from Panatom, but the Phoenix falls and Renegades back away.
That's a much slower push into the Renegades I'm sure they were hoping for, but they do still maintain 4 members. Jake still has ultimate, and they're all relatively healthy. Mid-Phoenix exposed, they're moving in.
25 seconds on Yarkor. Variety doesn't want to wait that long. He goes into the back. Look at the ultimate from Jake. It separated this fight, but Panatom will find his way around it anyway. Barracuda is evaporated. A wall up off to the side. Lasbro left alone here as well. And Sanguine are just going to try to chase down Variety here at this point. Looks like with the immediate CC, they'll be able to do so. Hey, that's a nice mantle stun, but it won't save your life, Variety. Renegades, they get themselves mid and left. Phoenix, but now Myth, they got to defend against 5 strong for Sanguine for the next minute.
For the next minute, I think there's a world where Sanguine could go for an end play here to try and push it through, but it's tough, man. Look where Yarkor is at. He's so far away. It's going to be a 4 versus 3 for at least another 15 seconds.
But I'm thinking the Renegades are on easy street. Everything I thought this game has been wrong. Now Sanguine maybe feeling comfortable working their way into the Renegades base. Can Jake do enough? Can Jake slow down the engage from Sanguine? Here comes Wrong-U in onto the Titan. Go Sanguine. Big time Kraken from Venenu. They're not doing enough damage to the Titan. Venenu's found one. It's Panatom who's now down. Jake has to go back into the fountain. Titan, it's so low here. Sanguine just need a little bit more damage. But Venenu, Barra, they've gone big. Shinto works back in. It's a double kill. Titan lives on. Triple for Barra. Renegades alive. 100 HP on the Titan. Deicide for Renegades. Down the mid lane they go.
So before we go ahead and jump back into watching that and breaking down some of the numbers, I'm going to go ahead and run you through some of the stats we're going to be paying attention to. We're not going to be worrying about how tanky Sanguine is. We're pretty much exclusively going to be worrying about how much damage they can do. So for that, we're going to want to know basic attack power, attack speed, power, flat penetration, and percent pen. These are going to give us the grounds for understanding their damage potentials. So at this point, Sanguine has just partially wiped Renegades and is beginning to head up mid lane. An important thing to know right around this point, I'm going to pause for Barracuda's up in another 40 seconds, and the mid wave, when uninterrupted, will take 50 seconds to go all the way from spawn to the mid lane Phoenix, which, because they spawn every 30 seconds during the match, means that this mid wave is going to hit the Phoenix line around the same time Barracuda is spawning. That's not quite fast enough for Sanguine, so they're going to go ahead and siege down the Phoenix before that mid wave ever gets there. Barracuda's a lot of the team's potential this late in the game, and we really don't want to see Sanguine in a situation where they have opened themselves up to receiving a lot more damage for backdoor protections to be removed. Before Sanguine goes into the Titan room, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the things that go into how tanky the Titan is. At this point, the Titan's base stats are 11,500 health, 95 physical protections, and 59 magical protections. This is because the Renegades still have 2 Phoenixes and 1 tower remaining. Before we go ahead and talk about the effective HP of the Titan, let's give a little bit of background about where that comes from. It comes from the damage calculation, which is raw damage dealt times all mitigations equals damage received. When you go ahead and divide mitigations over, you can determine the raw damage dealt based off of the damage received divided by the mitigations. If you want to know how much raw damage it takes in order to kill a particular target, you replace damage received with their health points, and so effective HP is reflective of the raw damage necessary to kill a particular target. The various forms of mitigations are made up mainly of basic armor mitigations, which is 100 divided by 100 plus your armor, and backdoor protections, which is 1/2 damage taken, so 50%. Armor can be modified in a bunch of different ways, but they happen in this order. First, you multiply by percent armor reduction, then you subtract flat armor reduction, then percent penetration and flat penetration are applied. Knowing this, we're going to go ahead and have to calculate the effective HP of the Titan relative to each character. This is because each character has different damage types, flat pen and percent pen. This first slide shows us the effective HP of the Titan with just the raw stats of each character and the Titan. Moving on to the next slide, we're going to go ahead and include aura, physical, and magical armor reduction from Void Shield and Void Stone, respectively. These end up having relatively small impacts on the tankiness of the Titan due to the fact that they're only impacting armor, which is an indirect impact on the mitigations. These will be in play so long as Cthulhu and Serket are alive and standing close enough to the Titan. Next up, we have the ability armor reduction. First of which is Cthulhu's Ultimates 1 ability, which applies a 3% armor reduction to both physical and magical, which stacks up to 5 times, totaling 15% armor reduction. We also have Serket 1, which will apply a 10% physical armor reduction to the target for 3 seconds, and bonus note, which won't be relevant here but will be relevant for damage calculation, is Raw 3 does give bonus power to each character standing within it. These things have a continued minimal effect on the tankiness of the Titan because they are only impacting armor. However, the Renegades have a particular god, Ymir, who has a passive that when people are afflicted by this passive, they deal 15% less damage. This ends up making the Titan 17.5% tankier-ish, which is a bigger impact than we have seen on all of the previous things. This means that it is very important to keep track of who is afflicted by Ymir's passive. It activates whenever any god is hit with any portion of Ymir's abilities. Next, we are going to go ahead and calculate the other half of this equation, which is the damage. For these, I went ahead and came up with reasonable cycles of damage to expect that sort of optimize the damage that a character can do before having to wait for an ability to come off of cooldown. For Cthulhu, this was rather simple, because all it is he ult, and then for the entire duration of his ultimate, he goes ahead and consistently uses his 1, his highest damaging ability. For Horus, this was also rather simple. Only 2 of his abilities are capable of damaging the Titan, so he simply has to ult, auto-attack cancel into his 1, and that is it. Ra is able to pre-fire his 2 so that it will pop as soon as he learns on the Titan with the Horus ult, and then auto-attack cancel into the rest of his kills. Serket auto-attack cancels into each of her abilities because her passive does not apply to the Titan. For Heimdall, since his highest damaging potential comes from simply auto-attacking, we went ahead and included his auto-attack chain, which is 3 hits that takes 1.025 seconds, which we will simply be rounding to 1 second. In order to calculate damage, we're going to go ahead and break this into 2 different parts, the first of which is ability damage. For this, we went ahead and calculated this based off of the power that they had times the scaling of each ability, however many auto attacks they used plus their basic attack power, and the base damage of the abilities. This is how we got to each of these numbers. Then we went ahead and divided by how long it takes them to do this to go ahead and give us DPS, which is not overly useful, but is still a good stat to have in order to compare potential damage output. For the second half of this calculation, we're going to go ahead and determine the item damage. Yarkor, Shinto, and Rongyu have not purchased any items that will deal damage to the Titan. However, Serket has, as well as Heimdall. Heimdall's Odysseus bow will proc every 4th auto, but in order to keep the numbers nice to play with, I went ahead and averaged that out over each auto and included that as part of his DPS. Combining these two, we can see that Heimdall deals pretty much as much damage as any other character can hope to in 1 second. So being able to buy time for Heimdall to continuously hit the Titan is going to be very important. Applying that 1 cycle damage to a reasonable effective HP of the Titan allows us to determine the percentage of the Titan's health that each character can reasonably do. However, that only gets us 45% of the Titan's HP. But if Netrioid on Heimdall is able to freely auto for 6 total seconds, which is only slightly longer than Ra's full combo or Serket's full combo, then the Titan dies before any other character is able to get their abilities back up and get more damage or begin another cycle of damage. As we hop back in, as Sanguine is right about to dive into the Renegade's Titan room, with this, we go ahead and see that everyone except for Netrioid on Heimdall goes ahead and takes the Horus ult into the Titan room. As the Horus ult is about to land, it does show a little bit of a marker, which allows Venenu to throw a Whirlpool and a Kraken at the feet of the Sanguine team. This ends up, combined with the remaining portions of Venenu's kit, pretty much killing the Serket before she is able to get any damage off on the Titan. Lazarus begins charging his ult as well, and here we see that most of the team is beginning to hit the Titan, standing in the Ra 3, really getting some good damage off. Now I'm going to go ahead and pause right here. This is where Ymir ults, and you see that Ra is slow immune, and Cthulhu is slow immune, so that's that immune tag. And what that immune tag means is that they have just been hit by Frostbite, which is Ymir's passive. Now, as this fight continues on, it is important to note that Heimdall was not hit by Ymir's ult, and does not have that Frostbite passive on him. Actually, because he did not take the Horus ult, he is just now in range of autoing the Titan. And the Renegades realize this and begin to focus down the Heimdall. The last thing they want is to give this Heimdall free reign to continuously auto-attack the Titan. So they are really focusing him down with a lot of their damage. As he gets lower and lower, he eventually will have to ult out in order to avoid a bunch of damage from the Renegades. And as this happens, Ymir is also going to go ahead and throw up his wall. This is very important because it really limits the options for the Heimdall to hit the Titan. He has to really majorly reposition, and what ends up happening is as he's coming back in, I'm going to pause here, Venenu happens to be fighting Cthulhu, and this lines up fairly well with this Ymir wall, and as that ability is sent out while he's fighting Cthulhu, it goes through the Ymir wall, and before Heimdall can react, he is hit by the very tail end of that ability, and that is quite possibly the biggest moment of this entire dive. That is when the entirety of Renegades has really cracked wide open their potential to win this game by not letting that Heimdall continue to auto-attack the Titan pretty much at all. Right about now is when the Titan is finally able to be hit without those backdoor protections, so he's significantly squishier. However, most of Sanguine is now dead. So that leaves just the Raw, who is sitting in his 3 and auto-attacking, which gives him that increased power, but he does go down. There still are the minions, however, so he goes down with the Titan at 147 HP, but the minions will deal damage, bringing the Titan all the way down to that 108, which is the final health of the Titan before this game ends. And that is the closest margins I have ever seen in any fight. If pretty much anything could have gone differently for Sanguine and they would have won that game, ultimately it kind of comes down to a fluke. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys with what the effective HPs of that 108 are. If you want to know what these are with backdoor protections removed, like it was at the very tail end of that fight, just go ahead and divide any of these numbers by 2. Thank you guys so very much for watching all the way through this. If you did enjoy, please feel free to give a like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.